This episode of The Reality Check is brought to you by HelloFresh. Forget takeout. HelloFresh delivers all the ingredients for delicious, healthy meals anyone can prepare at home in less than 30 minutes. And HelloFresh is giving our Canadian checkers 50% off their first order. Go to hellofresh.ca and use promo code REALITY50 to get 50% off your first order. That's hellofresh.ca, promo code REALITY50. This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is the show for Tuesday, October 3rd, and I'm your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Q-Boys?
Christina Roach.
Hello.
And producer Pat.
Hi everyone.
We have a great show for you today. Pat is going to give us another game of Name That. And I'm going to spend a few moments on some nuclear myths. But first, Adam, can a computer program tell if a person is gay?
Great question, Darren. Deep neural networks can detect sexual orientation from faces, or at least that's what the title of a recent paper by Zilun Wang and Michael Kaczynski from Stanford University claims. A study was done to compare facial features of gay and heterosexual men and lesbian and heterosexual women to see if a deep neural network could determine a person's sexual orientation and with what accuracy. So the idea is that there may be factors affecting both facial appearance and other traits, like pre- and postnatal hormone levels, developmental history, environmental factors, and gene expression. For example, testosterone affects behavior, dominance, things like that, and facial appearance, the width-to-height ratio of the face, and things like that. From a biological point of view, this is sort of settled science. When people talk about being born gay versus choosing to be gay, it's pretty well accepted amongst the LGBT community and the scientific community that sexual orientation is something which is largely determined before birth. People can generally already use facial appearance to accurately judge gender, age, race, and emotional state. This may not be 100%, but humans are pretty good at this in general. The researchers theorize that some of our intimate traits are prominently displayed on the face even if other people aren't able to perceive them. So they use deep neural networks for their research, and these simulate large multi-level networks of interconnected neurons, kind of like a human brain. So they're good at pattern recognition for digital images, sound, or text, as they can be used to analyze large unstructured data. The researchers mentioned that people can use single cues like mouth, eyes, or hair to determine sexual orientation better than chance, but this is still usually in the 55 to 65% range, which isn't that good. When I covered gaydar back in 2011 on episode 161, I looked at a lot of these traits that people could look at to determine sexual orientation, but again, most of them only ever predicted with slightly over 50%, so slightly better than chance, which is almost useless at trying to tell anything about an individual. Imagine, for example, trying to tell if someone is male or female based solely on height or weight. Men on average will be slightly taller and heavier than women, but you're going to misgender a hell of a lot of people if you assume that no woman can be taller or heavier than any man. So this metric, while based in reality, has very little value when you're trying to gauge an individual.
Right.
So researchers believe in the prenatal hormone theory of sexual orientation, and this suggests that same-sex sexual orientation is caused either by a male fetus being underexposed or a female fetus being overexposed to androgens responsible for sexual differentiation. So these androgens also affect facial appearance, where a male who is underexposed might have more feminine features and a woman who is overexposed might have more masculine features. So as such, prenatal hormone theory, according to the researchers, should cause changes in facial appearance of gay men and lesbian women that a pattern-detecting deep neural network may be able to identify. More specifically, gay men would have smaller jaws and chins, slimmer eyebrows, longer noses, larger foreheads, and lesbian women would have the opposite of those traits. Prior to this, research on the topic was mixed, with some studies showing that theory was pretty much true, but others didn't really correlate all features. So this research is attempting to break some new ground with that. So they studied 35,326 gay and heterosexual men and women in photos. And they admit some limitations on these photos. They were uploaded by participants on an online dating site, so there's varying quality in there, but the software was meant to focus on facial features without taking into account head orientation, background, and things like that. So it's not going to be like, well, you know what? Gay people took a lot of pictures on the beach. It's nothing that simple.
Well, and that sounds like a pretty healthy amount of pictures that they're looking at, too.
Yeah, and that's sort of key to how these deep neural networks work. The more data they can pump into them, the better they can be at predicting. So the larger the sample, the better they are. So a possible limitation that I thought could be taking place with this study was just that the percentage of gay people is smaller than that of straight people. So though the specific numbers aren't known, let's say, for example, you have 6% gay people in a given sample of people. Well, if I just predict that everyone's straight, then I'll have a 94% success rate. Well, the study did account for this. They had equal numbers of gay and heterosexual people. So they had 3,947 gay and heterosexual men with median age of 33 and 3,441 lesbian and heterosexual women with a median age of 29. So basically, to get these numbers even, they just randomly removed some users and some pictures to keep the data clean. They use this software called Face++ to determine face contours, mouth, eyebrows, eyes, and nose. They used a deep neural network called VGG Face, which was developed using millions of images to do facial recognition. So they used these images to train the neural network to learn if a face was gay or heterosexual based on what the person had stated on their dating profile. Now, basically, they would always take out a 20th of the photos, train with the other 19/20ths of the photos, and then use that to try to predict if the person was gay or straight with that test sample that they took out. And they repeated this 20 times so that they basically evaluated every set of photos by training on other photos. But they weren't kind of cheating by having the deep neural network already have seen that picture and seen what that orientation of that person was. So in some cases, only one image was used, while in other cases, there were up to 5 used. And they could distinguish between gay and heterosexual men in 81% of cases and 71% of cases in women, which is not bad. Mm-hmm. So when a human tries to determine this from the same photos, so they actually used the same photos in the set, and they had humans do a test to see. They only had 61% accuracy for the men and 54% accuracy for the women. Now, this accuracy went up when they had 5 images to work with, so basically they're able to get more data points and get a better idea of exactly what that face looks like. It was up to 91% accuracy for men and 83% accuracy for women.
Wow.
Now, they did other studies to attempt to isolate what features were more prominent in gay versus heterosexual men and lesbian versus heterosexual women. So for men, the most informative areas included the nose, eyes, eyebrows, cheeks, hairline, and chin. And for women, it was the nose, mouth corners, hair, and neckline. So they used another study to map locations on Face++ to measure the specific features which were more prominent to which group. And the gay men had narrower jaws, longer noses, longer foreheads than heterosexual men, and lesbian women had larger jaws and smaller foreheads than the heterosexual women. Now, this is all on average for all of this stuff, obviously. Now, other features beyond shapes of the face were present and could be considered, though these are potentially learned behaviors as opposed to facial traits that a person is usually born with. So gay men, for example, had less facial hair, which could be caused by differences in hair growth, or it could be grooming, or it could be a combination of both. They also had lighter skin, which could be a grooming thing, could be related to sun exposure, or could be linked to testosterone. So these things could be sort of innate differences, or they could be something very sort of trained by society type of thing with the group they're in. Lesbians had less gender-typical grooming, so they had less eye makeup, darker hair, and wore less revealing clothes. Heterosexual men and lesbian women were also more likely to wear baseball caps. Now, another study that they did attempted to gauge the femininity of faces. So they had a model that was trained with pictures of men and women to gauge what traits were considered to be feminine. And it showed that the faces of gay men were more feminine on average, and that the faces of lesbian women were more masculine on average. But this is only reliable with a 57% confidence level for men and 58% confidence level for women, which is, again, next to useful. It's statistically significant and potentially interesting from a data point of view, but as usefulness goes, it really isn't. So when you're breaking this up into individual features, it becomes harder to use any one of those features to accurately predict sexual orientation. But with all the features considered together, it gets more accurate, and when the deep neural network does it, the accuracy gets to those high levels that I mentioned earlier. So, great study. What are the limitations here? Well, the researchers are right to warn against overinterpreting the data. They don't use the words on average throughout the entire study, where I think when most people talk about things like this, they want to throw in caveats like that a lot. But it is pointed out that, we're talking about averages here, so you can't talk about individual people for any of these traits, because you're always going to have things that some people that don't fall into one group that you would misassign if you just go on the length of the nose or the width of the chin or something like that. That gay men and women are on average gender atypical does not mean that all gay men are more feminine than all heterosexual men, or that lesbian women are more masculine than all heterosexual women. That's just not how it works. And the sample wasn't perfect. Test only measured white participants from the US, and this is one of the main criticisms that I saw from other articles and other discussions on this. And the reason they stated was that prejudice against gay people and the use of online dating sites isn't evenly distributed across ethnic groups, which meant they couldn't get really good data. So it kind of makes sense. And their findings are still interesting based on what they did, but this isn't really a useful tool for measuring people. And that's not really what they're trying to do. They're trying to do research to tell something about the world, right?
Well, and on that note, you could say even if it was more generalizable, it might be more concerning.
Yeah.
So right now, a system that could just detect the sexual orientation of an individual is bad for most people on Earth, I'd say.
Yeah.
Or many people on Earth, especially in other countries where you could be killed for it,
Yeah.
let alone people not wanting to be personally outed for it. So while it is a limitation that, once again, white people, once again, American white people, in a way that's useful to protect the safety of other people from other cultures.
Yes.
Although I think this is just a matter of time till there's enough faces to go through and churn it all. As well as you said, America has a huge population base relative to other countries, as well as a culture which would encourage, more so than other countries, again, people to come out as homosexual.
Yeah.
So to have such a large sample to choose from, as opposed to other countries, which would be far more narrow in both instances.
Yeah, and you're going to start to come into issues where different ethnic groups may have different facial features, which might kind of skew with how this algorithm works. So they would really need to have an algorithm that determines what ethnic group you fall into, and then from there have a baseline based on all the different ethnic groups. So, if you had a government that wants to outlaw homosexuality, well, they would need a deep neural network that is trained on photos of people from the specific ethnic group in that country. But if the leaders of that country say ridiculous things like, we don't have gay people in our country, well, they're never going to be able to get a good sample because they wouldn't have that data. And if the people in that country aren't giving those photos, they'd have to go to another country with a similar ethnic group and train it on that. So
I think
it's complicated.
I think you should think more cynically. Someone at the top says that someone who works for their equivalent of the CIA or CSIS does the program, and then they find the people.
Yeah. So obviously there are ethical concerns. The researchers were more saying, no, we don't feel ethically bad about releasing this information. They want to educate people about the risks and about what people are already doing and what people could potentially be doing. So that is a concern. But from a pure research point of view, basically the researchers were trying to sort of validate this prenatal hormone theory, and that prenatal hormone theory predicted these results, and these results sort of to them confirm that this is what's going on with sexual preference.
As both you and Darren pointed out, it could be used against people.
Yeah.
I don't really see the value in terms of helping people.
No. And some of the articles mention things like maybe someone wants to run this on themselves to see if they're gay. I'm not sure that's a great way to find out whether you're gay. And you're going to, I got a false positive or I got a false negative. What am I going to decide about my life based on that?
That sounds absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be better than a stupid quiz online, but it might be just as dumb. I was just going to say that in two ways, the research is, I guess, interesting. One is that you could actually have the machine learning program do it itself. And then two, it does validate a certain belief about biology, innate preferences, and orientation.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it has a dual interest of look what we can do with machine learning algorithms, as well as this theory seems to be supported because it was just validated.
So the other limitation I just wanted to mention, they didn't use any transgender people in the study. And obviously some people see that as a limitation, but I think that would just be a big problem for the data.
Well, also, the number of transgender people is so small. It's less than 1%, maybe less than a fraction of a percent in the United States even, that they may not have the numbers because you'd have enough people online who are also declaring themselves to be transgender.
Yeah. Well, again, you could potentially measure something like that, but you need to train a whole different subset, and it would just get complicated. You need to be able to detect that first before then try and infer something else, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, at the end of the day, a limitation is it's not 100%. So if you have a false positive or false negative, it's a big problem. So if a government did decide to use something like that, well, would they really want to if they're going to make a big mistake and potentially sentence someone to death? It's kind of ridiculous. Obviously, we don't hope such governments would ever have access or be able to use such a tool on their people to do anything like that. Now, it seems like deep neural networks really can detect sexual orientation from faces. This isn't a perfect system, but it does considerably better than people at determining the orientation of a subject in a photo. This sort of technology certainly comes with a number of privacy concerns, which the LGBT community should be aware of. One would hope that it would not be used unlawfully to assess the sexual orientation of someone who does not wish it to be known. Or, I said unlawfully, but lawfully in a country where it is legitimately illegal to be gay, we would hope that those countries don't use it lawfully in what they consider to be legal.
And now to Pat for another game of Name That.
All right, here we go with another edition of everyone's favorite mostly guessing game, Name That. Today we play Name That, the world's largest. No tiebreaker today. If we're tied after 5 questions, we'll end that way. As usual, I'll give you a piece of information and then ask you to name that from the choices provided. I've randomly selected the order and will stay in that order. Darren, you're up first. According to 2016 statistics, what is the world's largest airport based on international passenger traffic? Name that. Is it A, Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport, B, London Heathrow Airport, C, Dubai International Airport, or D, New York City's JFK Airport?
That's a good series of questions you got there. Dubai.
Darren says C. Next, Adam.
I feel like it would just be so North America centric to say JFK, even though that's what I'm inclined to say. But I will say London Heathrow.
And lastly, Christina.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards London Heathrow myself. So I'll say London Heathrow.
And Darren is correct.
Oh,
yes.
Dubai International Airport with over 83 million passengers. Number 2 is Heathrow with 71 million. Number 3 is Hong Kong with 70 million. And number 4 is Amsterdam with 63 million. Paris is number 5. JFK, and this was a surprise to me, is number 19.
Wow.
Interesting.
Well, there are two airports in New York, right? JFK's is one of them.
Well, there are 2 airports in many cities.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
So
he said international, and that's why I picked Dubai.
Okay. Now, is it that a lot more people than I thought were going to Dubai are going to Dubai, or is it also a hub that a lot of people are flying through in the area?
I would think it's probably the latter, but I'm not 100% certain.
Dubai's not that big. It got to be a hub. Yeah. And they all have to be hubs for that many people.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Adam, name that. What is the world's largest library by number of items cataloged? Is it A, the British Library, B, the Library of Congress, C, the Russian State Library, or D, the German National Library?
I'm going to go with the Russian State Library. Whatever letter that was.
Adam says C, and next is Christina.
What is the first one again?
British Library, Library of Congress, Russian State Library, or the German National Library?
I'm going to say Germany. Schnell.
That means faster.
Yeah, I know.
Christina says D, and lastly, Darren.
This is interesting because of the duration of the countries into existence. Yeah. So I wanted to pick Library of Congress, and but it's shorter. But I think they just catalog everything, and the population's larger. So any document they printed, I think they're also cataloging tweets. So U.S. Library of Congress.
Categorizing tweets.
So Darren says B, and the winner of this question is Pat.
Oh.
The answer is A, the British Library with over 170 million items cataloged. Number 2 is the Library of Congress, 164 million. Number 3 is the Library and Archives of Canada,
Oh,
Wow.
that's down the street.
It's right there. I can almost see it.
with 54 million. And number 4 is the New York Public Library with 53 million.
Oh, I
The
went
Russian State Library is number 5. The German National Library is number 12.
So wait, the New York Public Library is 4.
That's correct.
That's crazy.
The library
That's
featured in
crazy.
Ghostbusters is number 4.
That's exactly what I meant. Sorry, I should have spoken differently. Thank you, Adam.
Question number 3. Now, if I were to ask the largest country in the world by population, I suspect everyone would guess number 1 and number 2, China and India.
Yeah.
But that's too easy for a game of Name That. Christina, name that. Which country is number 3? A, the United States, B, Pakistan, C, Russia, or D, Brazil?
You guys should have seen the smug look on his face when he was reading that. Number 3, Pakistan.
Christina says B. Next is Darren.
United States.
Darren says A, the United States. And lastly, Adam.
I'm going to say Russia, even though, yeah, I'm going to say Russia.
It's not Russia.
I still said it.
It's not Russia, and it's not Brazil.
Adam says C, and Darren is correct. The answer is A, the United States with 322 million.
Can I guess?
Question.
320 United States. Pakistan's in the 200 million. Russia's about 140, and Brazil, I feel like it's either 160 or 120.
So China is number 1 with 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
India is number 2 with 1.3 billion. Number 4 is Indonesia,
200 million.
260 million. Brazil's ranked number 5. Pakistan is number 6. Russia's number 9.
Oh, Brazil was number 5.
Darren, name that. What's the world's largest religion in terms of number of followers? Is it A, Islam, B, Hinduism, C, Christianity, or D, Buddhism?
Assuming Christianity most broadly, I will pick Christianity.
Darren picks C, and next is Adam.
Can you repeat the religions again, please?
Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism.
Buddhism, does it really count, Pat?
I'm going to say Buddhism.
Adam says D, and lastly, Christina.
I got to go with Christianity.
Christina agrees with Darren, and Christina and Darren are correct.
Woohoo!
The answer is C, Christianity with 2.4 billion followers. Number 2 is Islam with 1.8 billion. Number 3, Hinduism with 1.1 billion. And number 4, Buddhism with 520 million.
Nailed it.
Let's also quickly mention atheism. It is on the rise, and Judaism is like 15 to 20 million people total.
Yeah.
So going into question 5, it doesn't matter that Darren has already won.
Am I? Is it 3 to 1?
Yeah. I
It
think
is
I
3 for you, 1
Yep.
for Christina, 0 for Adam.
I believe in you, Adam. You can do this.
According to Fortune Global 500, what is the largest public, state-owned, or private business by consolidated revenues as of 2016? Adam, name that.
Oh, yeah.
Is it A, Volkswagen, B, Apple, C, Walmart, or D, ExxonMobil?
Ooh.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's cars or friggin' Apple. They have such a small share of the business. Walmart or ExxonMobil. What was the metric that's being used?
By consolidated revenue.
Revenue. I think Walmart does a lot of business, but I'm going to say ExxonMobil might do more profit. So I'm going to go with them. D.
Adam says D. Next is Christina.
That's a tough one. But then Walmart has all these brands.
Those lovely George clothes.
Yeah. Damn. I'm going to say Apple, because it doesn't matter anyway.
Christina says B. And lastly, Darren.
Darren thinks he needs to know more financial terms, know exactly what consolidated revenue means. Because Apple is number 1 by market cap. And I know Walmart is churning through more products. I'll pick Apple.
And the winner of this question is Pat. The answer is, in fact, Walmart.
Damn it.
Boo.
State Grid is number 2. Sinopec Group is number 3. China National Petroleum is number 4. Volkswagen is number 6. Apple is number 9. And ExxonMobil is number 10. So congratulations, Darren. Definitive win for you.
Thank you, Pat. Given the recent developments between the US and North Korea, I thought I'd provide a quick overview of some myths about nuclear weapons. My main source is Dan Zak, who is a reporter for the Washington Post and author of Almighty Courage, Resistance and Existential Peril in the Nuclear Age, a book about nuclear weapons and anti-nuclear activism. Myth number 1. Nuclear weapons haven't been used since Nagasaki. I think many people have this belief, and they aren't entirely wrong, they just need to be more specific. Quoting Zak, although nuclear weapons have not been used again in combat, they've been detonated 2,055 times since August 9th, 1945, mostly by the United States and the Soviet Union. These tests have both been demonstrations of force and experiments with weapons design and effectiveness. From 1946 to 1958, for example, the United States exploded the equivalent of 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day in the Marshall Islands to study the weaponry and intimidate Moscow. The USSR wrought similar devastation near the Arctic Circle and in present-day Kazakhstan.
I remember watching there was like a video that showed over time all the nuclear detonations, and it was just like boop, 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 boop. There was just a ton. It was
It's just crazy. Now, this century, it's only North Korea that has tested nukes, but military types like to say the arsenals of the United States are constantly a deterrent. In a way, even tested at all times.
Yeah.
But yeah, over 2,000 times. That surprised me. I knew there were some bomb tests here and there, but that's a staggering amount. Number 2, nuclear weapons keep the peace. Many people say that for as long as we've had nukes, we haven't had a direct war among great powers. Of course, there have been many proxy wars fought all over the place, Korea, Central America, Vietnam, Afghanistan, etc. The idea is that these weapons make war so costly it won't happen. Quoting Zak, yet Richard Nixon's madman theory that he should be viewed as crazy enough to unleash nuclear weapons in the Vietnam War neither curbed bloodshed nor cowed Moscow at the Viet Cong. The Cuban Missile Crisis did not result in nuclear war, but John F. Kennedy made decisions that might have led to one. This is the idea that, well, look, if we have nukes, people are going to stop fighting, and that wasn't the case at all. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As well, the more you read about the Cuban Missile Crisis, the more you realize how close it was to having a nuclear war. I mentioned Petrov last week, and nuclear wars seemed to be averted by luck in that case. Yeah. Additionally, Zak argues that the rumor of a nuclear program in Iraq and Saddam Hussein helping terrorists is why the U.S. is actually in a costly war for about 14 years now.
So instead of being a deterrent, it actually triggered.
Right, exactly. It's the idea that once you have a nuclear weapon, it will deter some actions, but on the way to getting it, it may increase other ones.
Yeah.
And myth number 3, nuclear terrorism is likely to happen. I think TV and various movies often have some sort of nuclear bomb going off somewhere that someone has to stop before the counter runs down. Mm-hmm. Zak quotes Obama and a State Department official saying nuclear terrorism is the biggest threat, but it seems it isn't quite the case. While the results would indeed be horrible, the probability is very low. Zak quotes retired Los Alamos chemist Cheryl Rolfer speaking to the Arms Control Association, quote, there have been a number of articles that talk about a market in nuclear materials. Now, in order to have a market, you need a seller and a buyer, and as far as I'm aware, there are not many buyers out there. In any case, if a terrorist group could get, say, sufficient enriched uranium to make a bomb, would they be able to make it? There are a lot of things that can go wrong. Mm-hmm. That said, there could still be a dirty bomb with radioactive materials or even just various accidents. In the past 20 years, there have been almost 3,000 cases of radioactive material being lost, stolen, or misused. Wow. For more details on accidents, curious listeners might want to check out Eric Schlosser's book, Command and Control. I actually think even though there may be a dirty bomb with radioactive materials, which is not a nuclear bomb, the average layperson, I don't know if they'd differentiate the two. A radioactive bomb went off in downtown versus a nuclear bomb. Yeah.
Is downtown still there? Wasn't a nuclear bomb.
In summation, nukes have been used many times since Nagasaki, even by great powers, just not directly against each other. Nukes may deter, but they can also invite wars like in Iraq. And finally, nuclear terrorism isn't likely, but will be so psychologically harmful that people are justifiably concerned about it.
On the risk scale, that's low probability, but very, very high impact, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And it becomes hard to know how to treat those things exactly. Thanks for joining us once again. Adam gave us an overview of a paper which shows that algorithms can detect sexual orientation from faces, and it seems to be better than humans. Hopefully this won't be misused. Pat gave us a really difficult game of Name That, which I happened to win, and I gave you some short myths about nuclear weapons, of how they've been used frequently. They're not that likely to cause a terrorist incident, and they don't necessarily lead to safety as much as people think. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
Stay classy, not smartassy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at @TRC_podcast.